I'm sure he has, a staff of doctors and people, but I mean, repeating the same thing twice and expecting different results.
Agassi went nuclear on live television. He said the thing nobody at Wimbledon wants to say out loud. Sinner's body is not ready. The blood on his trainer proves it. Yesterday, center court fell silent. Red soaked through white canvas, visible for 2 full sets. The crowd gasped. Then they cheered. Sinner laughed it off. Broadcasters moved on within seconds. But last night, Italian reporters confirmed something darker. That glucose monitor strapped to his arm is not a wellness gadget. It is medical surveillance. Doctors at San Rafael Hospital spent 2 days running cardiac and metabolic tests, investigating why the world's best player collapsed 1 game from victory in Paris. His body shut down there. Cincinnati broke him next. Shanghai followed months later. Only a roof saved him in Australia. 4 collapses in 12 months. That is not bad luck. That is a pattern doctors cannot ignore. Agassi spotted it before anyone else did. He called out a clear flaw in Sinner's preparation. Courier backed him on air. The tennis establishment said nothing. Subscribe to this channel right now. What comes next is the story Wimbledon desperately needs buried. That bloody trainer? It was the least alarming part of yesterday. His name was a footnote in the post-match coverage. Miomir Kekmanovic, ranked 50th in the world, pushed the defending champion to 5 sets on a stage built for celebration, not survival. That detail alone should have raised eyebrows across the tennis press. It barely registered. Rewind 32 days. Roland Garros, 2nd round. Sinner stood 2 points from a routine win against Juan Manuel Cerundolo, an Argentine ranked 56th. He led 5 games to 1 in the 3rd set. Then something happened that no scoreline can fully capture. 18 of the next 20 games belonged to his opponent. The world number 1 simply stopped functioning as an athlete. Commentators searched for tactical explanations. There weren't any. Sinner offered his own account afterward, and it should have triggered alarm bells far beyond Paris. "I didn't have energy, really," he said. "I was very, very flat the whole body." Those words came from a man who had won 30 matches in a row before that afternoon. Energy doesn't vanish from elite athletes without cause. Something physiological was happening inside him, and even Sinner seemed unsure what. 48 hours later, reporters from La Gazzetta dello Sport tracked him to San Rafael Hospital in Milan. 2 days of testing followed. Cardiac function, metabolic markers. The kind of evaluation reserved for situations doctors consider serious, not routine. His camp labeled the entire process strictly confidential. Language that tends to mean exactly what it sounds like. Nobody explains away a minor issue with 2 days of hospital testing and a gag order on the results. Weeks later, when Sinner stepped onto a practice court in Monte Carlo to prepare for Wimbledon, photographers spotted the device on his arm immediately. A small white sensor. The kind typically worn by diabetics managing blood sugar around the clock. According to the same Italian outlet, doctors fitted him with a continuous glucose monitor specifically because of what happened in Paris. They wanted real-time data on how his blood sugar behaved during extended physical exertion. The exact scenario that broke him against Cerundolo. This pattern didn't begin in May. Trace it backward and a troubling shape emerges. At the Australian Open earlier this year, Sinner struggled physically during a brutal stretch against Elliot Spizzirri, only for the tournament's heat policy to bring down the stadium roof and effectively rescue him mid-match. Paris offered no such mercy. There was no roof to summon, no rule to invoke. His body simply had to manage on its own, and it failed to. Go back further still, into 2025, and the picture sharpens further. Sinner retired from matches in both Cincinnati and Shanghai that year, his body shutting down under physical strain on each occasion. 4 separate collapses across roughly 12 months form a pattern no statistician would dismiss as coincidence. Elite athletes experience bad days. They rarely experience this specific failure mode repeatedly against a backdrop of supposed peak conditioning. Andre Agassi watched all of this unfold from a broadcast booth, and unlike most of the tennis establishment, he refused to soften his language. Speaking on TNT Sports, he drew a direct comparison to his own career. "I had a body clock of about 4 hours when I played. Agassi explained. And if you gave me hot conditions, it dropped to like 345, 350. It didn't change a lot. Then came the line that mattered most. But to go from him playing 5.5 hours last year in the finals, and then having the Heat tap him in an hour 45, there's a difference between being fit and being prepared. That distinction deserves attention. Fitness measures raw physical capacity. Preparation measures whether a body has been calibrated to sustain that capacity under specific conditions. Agassi's argument suggested Sinner possessed plenty of the former and a troubling deficit in the latter. He didn't stop there either. He needs to figure out what to change, Agassi continued. He may need to bring someone in. It's got to be some form of hydration issue. Jim Courier, working the same broadcast, attacked a different angle entirely. During the Paris match, Sinner received a medical timeout for what appeared to be cramping, a condition tennis rules generally exclude from medical timeout eligibility precisely because it's considered a fitness issue rather than an injury. Courier didn't hide his frustration. "This is absolute baloney," he said, live on air. "That's not fair. That's not right. We love the top players. They drive the sport, but you've got to apply the rules fairly." His criticism carried weight because it wasn't isolated commentary. Tennis analysts have noted that lower-ranked players have occasionally been denied similar medical timeout requests in past tournaments, raising uncomfortable questions about whether rules bend differently depending on who's asking. A world number one receives benefit of the doubt that a journeyman ranked outside the top 100 might not. Context from tennis history makes the Roland Garros collapse even more striking. Sinner's defeat marked the first time an incumbent world number one failed to reach the third round at Roland Garros since the year 2000. The man who suffered that previous early exit happened to be Andre Agassi himself, a fact that adds an unexpected layer of authority to his recent criticism. He isn't speaking as an outside observer lobbing accusations from comfort. He's speaking as someone who once lived through a version of that exact failure. Coming into Wimbledon, Sinner carried a troubling 5-set record into the tournament, having lost 8 of his previous 9 matches that reached a deciding set. Against Kekmanovic, he needed every inch of those 5 sets just to advance past the first round, scattering 52 unforced errors across the court along the way. Numbers like that don't belong to a player operating at full confidence and physical certainty. They belong to someone fighting something internal while the scoreboard tries to mask it. At his pre-tournament press conference, Sinner addressed the hospital visit directly, though his answer raised as many questions as it resolved. "They were general tests to see health-wise how I was, to be sure that all is okay with the body, which it is," he said. "All tests were really good." Reporters pressed further, and his tone shifted slightly. He acknowledged adjustments had been made to his preparation without specifying what they involved. "We did some changes," he admitted. "I don't say big changes, but I always believe in small details. We're not going to see the result here. It's a long process." A long process attempted in the middle of a tournament he's expected to win. That phrasing alone suggests his team views this as ongoing management rather than a resolved issue. Wimbledon does offer him certain advantages Paris never could. Cooler English summer temperatures, faster grass courts that tend to produce shorter rallies and matches, and a tournament structure generally less punishing on a body prone to sudden energy crashes during extended physical battles. Doctors cleared him to compete, and on pure ranking and recent dominance, he remains the heavy favorite to lift the trophy again. Should he manage it, the achievement would place him among rare company. Only 9 men in the history of the tournament have successfully defended a Wimbledon title in back-to-back years. Sinner stands one step from becoming the 10th, an opportunity that would cement his current era as one of the sport's most dominant individual runs in recent memory. But opportunity and risk rarely travel separately in cases like this. A man chasing tennis immortality is simultaneously wearing a glucose monitor prescribed after his own body betrayed him on the sport's biggest stages. Reporters who tracked his hospital visit to Milan weren't chasing tabloid speculation. They were following a paper trail his own team tried to keep sealed. Agassi didn't manufacture a controversy out of nothing either. He identified a measurable gap between physical capability and competitive readiness, using his own career as the benchmark for comparison. The blood inside that shoe traced back to something as mundane as a damaged nail, nothing more dramatic than that on its own. Strip away the visual shock of red staining white canvas, though, and what remains is a player whose body has betrayed him on multiple continents within a single calendar year, whose medical team felt compelled to disclose nothing voluntarily, and whose closest historical parallel sits in a broadcast booth calling out the exact pattern in real time. Wimbledon's broadcasters chose to frame Sunday's match as a gritty survival story, the kind that gets clipped into highlight reels and forgotten by Wednesday. Agassi chose a different frame entirely, one rooted in decades of personal experience pushing a body through identical conditions. Whether Sinner's team can solve whatever is happening beneath the surface before his next 5-set test remains genuinely uncertain, and that uncertainty is precisely what makes the coming weeks worth watching closely. If this story matters to you, make sure you're subscribed to this channel before the next match begins. We'll be tracking every signal his body sends throughout this tournament, breaking down what the official narrative leaves out and what the numbers actually reveal. Turn on notifications so you never miss the moment this story breaks wide open.